Hi, I'm Jason Hooper from FixYourGut.com, and today I'm going to be talking about low-level light therapy, low-level laser therapy, or sometimes called cold laser therapy. This is a modality of treatment that is used across a wide variety of ailments, tendonitis, bone repair. It's been used for traumatic brain injury, tuberculosis even, or other ailments affecting the lungs. Just a lot of different things have been treated, and there's data to suggest that a lot of these have been treated successfully. Some of them have not been treated successfully. I want to go into maybe why some of those studies are showing that some of those modalities of treatment have not been successful. It might have to do with the equipment they used, and I think that there's probably a reason that we should maybe talk about the standardization of equipment for each specific modality and person that it's being used for, and kind of how to manipulate that to get it to work better. And also why some of the consumer grade products on the market, in fact most of the consumer grade products on the market are somewhat useless or ineffective. So essentially what we're doing here is we're concentrating light, and we're taking that light and we're shining it at a specific wavelength, and the light will attenuate at a certain point inside the body. And it matters where the light starts to attenuate. If it starts to attenuate on the surface of the skin, and you're trying to treat something that's further inside the body, it's not really going to do anything. If you over penetrate, well then it's not going to get where it needs to go either. So like if you've ever tried one of the consumer grade devices and your skin starts getting really hot, well, unless you're using it to treat the skin, that's the heat that's being generated by the light frequency, by the attenuation of the light frequency. That's what's causing the heat. And so if you're always just getting really hot, really warm on the surface, it's probably inferior equipment, and it's probably not going to really do anything for you except kind of warm up the area. So what can't low-level laser therapy be used for that's commonly used? To treat delayed onset muscle soreness, okay? In between workouts, if you have a device and you're using it to treat sore muscles, the data would suggest that this is not really going to do anything for you to help that. And that's sort of an area that's kind of misunderstood also. So don't use it for that. There's not really a lot of evidence to suggest that it can treat too much infectious disease except within the lungs, and it doesn't look like that it's actually fighting the disease itself, but more repairing the sensitive tissues of the lungs. So if you have another condition, maybe a staph infection or something, you try to treat that with light therapy, it may not work. But people who have suffered from arthritis have found relief at using the correct modalities, people who have injuries and broken bones and stuff. And one of the reasons why I'm getting into this video is because I've just had an unusually high concentration of coaching clients who have either been injured themselves or have had family members that have been injured, and they say, what do I do? How do I get better? I had a client whose daughter's a gymnast, and she broke her leg, and he's a good dad. He really wants his daughter to recover as quickly as possible, and this is one of the modalities I talked about that could be effective in her treatment. And I have another client that injured their shoulder by just basically working out only the front deltoid too much and not really focus on the mid and rear delt, and ended up with a muscle imbalance issue and some tendon pain all through the bicep tendon. And I also recommended this to kind of speed up the recovery, because you have to let that arm rest and get going again in the gym. And I've had others too that have recently requested information on this and gotten coaching on this to get better. And when they ask me, hey, what's the best device for this? The answer I always give them is just build one yourself. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to show you guys how to build your own device, sort of how this stuff works, and the reason why this building your own device for your specific use case is better than anything that you could possibly buy. Better than multi-$1,000 medical grade units. You can build one better for your own use case yourself that can also be customizable for the area that you're using it on, depth of penetration, and all that stuff. So hang with me through the video, and I'm going to show you a simple, super easy way to do this so that you don't have to know too much about electronics or anything for this. You can just follow along with me, really build one that's pretty easy to do on your own, and you can have one that's really cheap to build. Definitely, even if you buy more expensive parts, you're going to be spending way under $50. And I'll show you how to do all that with this equipment that we have here. I definitely also want to recommend that if you're dealing with red lasers, and the frequencies that we're going to be dealing with are all either red or near infrared, and you definitely need to protect your glasses. I'm going to be mindful of my recording equipment too, because these lasers can damage the sensors on your cameras. And so when I demonstrate that the thing works and turns on and stuff, I'm going to try to cover it as much as possible so that I keep it from damaging the sensors and making sure that I don't break my equipment. Now, there's a lot of healthy skepticism about low-level laser therapy, and I think that it's good to be skeptical, and I think that we shouldn't just accept all of these modalities on face value. We should test them and make sure that we clearly understand how they're working, or if they're not working, or in what cases are they working, who are they working for, and it's kind of in its experimental phases. There haven't been a lot of FDA approved treatments. In fact, I don't think any of them have been FDA approved. I don't think they've gone through that process so far, which is unusual because this has been around for quite a few decades now. And when there's sort of a hole in the research and hole in the approval process like that, we end up finding people that take advantage of that, and they produce products and make claims that are unsubstantiated, or release stuff that could even be harmful. So this is kind of use at your own risk type of stuff, and may or may not be successful depending on the way you design it and stuff. But we're going to look at some studies and to kind of make the case for how much power should be going through your system, and what kind of wavelength of light that you should have in order to get the best benefit for you. Now, if you want to go into a doctor and have this done, or some physical therapists do this, maybe even chiropractors, people who are dealing in alternative forms of treatment, that's great. They probably have very nice, very expensive equipment, and hopefully they know what they're doing, and can get you feeling a lot better. The frequency is kind of important, so that might get expensive over the course of time. But to have a pro do it, it might be better than trying to do it yourself and treat yourself at home. And definitely loop in your doctor on this type of stuff. Unfortunately, insurance companies won't cover this stuff for most cases. Only on there's like some oral uses that they have approved, but for treating injuries and stuff like that, they claim that it's too experimental and they won't cover it, so you'll have to pay out of pocket or build one yourself. Now, you can injure yourself if you do this the wrong way, particularly if you go too powerful and you use a wavelength that's too low or too high. If you get too far into the infrared, you can really penetrate too deeply, and if more is not always better. So if you're dosing yourself with high intensity light for too long, you can stress those tissues that you're trying to heal, and you actually have the opposite effect. You'll damage them more, and your recovery time will be slower, and maybe even prevent yourself from recovering at all if you're not careful about it. So I want to talk about why some of the consumer devices that you can get on online or whatever shipped to you, why they're not effective. And it seems to be that the biggest factors are the wavelength that's being used, and which there's some debate over, but the dose is definitely not debatable. And I would like to look at this study. And this study looked at 88 randomized controlled trials, of which 20 trials included patients with chronic joint disorders. And 6 trials were excluded for not using irradiating the joint capsule. So they tried to do they did a meta-analysis, and they tried to find that specific modality of treating joint pain. And they looked at all of them, and they looked at the amount of power going through the lasers and the effectiveness that it had. And so unfortunately what they found was that if you're not using enough power, if the voltage isn't correct on your system, then they found no difference between the low-level laser therapy and placebo. But if it was in the correct range and the doses which was correct, they saw positive outcomes. So that's one thing you need to understand, is that a lot of these devices, especially the battery-powered ones, they're not supplying enough they're not supplying enough voltage or amperage to get the effect that you want. And a lot of the times, the bulbs that they're using are also not designed to be at the correct voltage. And the device that we're going to be building later, we're going to be using 12-volt bulbs with 12-volt, we're going to use 8 AA batteries, which is all combined and in series is 12 volts as well. And that seems to be the threshold for you to be able to get some positive results. Another issue with why some of these consumer grade LLLT devices don't work very well, or at all actually, is because they use the wrong wavelength. Okay, so according to this study, the 2 wavelengths that they identified that have any kind of clinical results are 904 nanometers and 632 nanometers. Other than that, nothing really seems to work very well. So you've got to be able to get bulbs that have one of those 2 wavelengths. So what's the difference between the 2? And why would you decide to use one versus the other? Well, the longer the wavelength is, the less it's going to attenuate, and which means the deeper it can penetrate and travel. So the wavelength that we're going to be looking at today for filming purposes is 632, because that shows up better on camera. 904 shows up a little bit on camera. You can't really see it with your eyes too well. It's in the near-infrared spectrum, but just for demonstrative purposes, we're going to be using 632, which is going to attenuate shallower in the body, which can be good and it can be bad. It depends upon what you're treating, and I'm going to kind of show you on my hand. Unfortunately, these lasers damaged my camera sensors, so I have to be very careful with how much I film with these things on. You're going to have to see for yourself at some point, because it's just hard to film and not break my stuff. But yeah, those are the 2 wavelengths that you should deal with when building your own device or when purchasing the device. And the other thing that you need to understand about these bulbs are that if you've got, like, why in the world do they have companies that are putting diffusers on these laser diodes? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You want the laser to go straight through. You don't want it to diffuse. You want it to be concentrated. And there are very few companies that actually make these bulbs with the correct wattage output, the correct wavelength, and the correct diffuser and focal length, so that the light gets where it needs to go. Surprisingly, few are making these. And and again, the consumer grade devices, they use all kinds of stuff, and I'm not even sure if they care, or if they know what they're doing, or if they just don't care, or whatever, just so they can make a buck. I'm not really sure, but I do know that like 90% of the stuff that I see on Amazon is just complete garbage, and the stuff that actually works is multiple thousands of dollars, and just, you could do a lot better. You can build one on your own, and that's a lot better, and that does the job. So how does this work? What's the mechanism of action here? So there's 6 different phases of healing, and this tends to greatly affect the second phase. So the earlier on you can do this, the better. Within if you have an injury, within 3 days, satellite cells start to become activated, and low-level light therapy tends to improve satellite cell activation. It also tends to improve mitochondrial function, and with all of these chemical reactions that are going on to repair tissue, this is extremely important to have lots of ATP, lots of mitochondrial output, because it takes a lot of biochemical energy in order to make these injury repairs. And another thing that they noticed in this study was that there was far less scar tissue if the low-level light therapy was being used. So it seems not only does it improve recovery time, but you're more efficient in your biological repair, meaning that extra tissues aren't being created, scar tissues aren't being created as much, and that you're getting back to what it once was before the injury. But yeah, if you want something done right, do it yourself, and I encourage you to maybe experiment with this on your own, and build your own device if this is something that you're going to experiment with and use. Definitely under medical supervision, though. Don't just do it all on your own. Have your doctor look at it, and if you need some coaching, get some coaching. But yeah, unfortunately, there's just a lot of crooks in this space, and I would like to draw your attention to a company called Q-Lasers, and Q-Lasers Private Membership Association was being sued by the FDA, and they lost the lawsuit. And I'm pretty sure the outcome of this case was that the CEO actually had to go to jail for a year, and I think 2 of his employees had to go to jail for maybe 2 years. And there was restitution. I think the fine was somewhere north of $600,000. They lost a lot of money and got caught, and it's good because they were definitely selling products that were not effective, that were not going to work. And so to me, it seems like they got what was coming to them. If you're going to sell a product like that, you need to go through the FDA approved process. Now, if you're going to build it on your own and use it for your own personal use under the supervision of your doctor, that's a completely different story, because what you do in the comfort of your own home is your own business. And if you're being supervised by a doctor and everything's okay, well, that's great. They're not going to come after you for that. But if you're trying to sell this to other people, well, then that becomes a problem, especially if what you're selling to them just doesn't work and it's a scam. I think when scammers go into these sort of experimental areas or these under-researched areas, it does a huge disservice to this area, because there are studies showing positive results with this, but if you're putting out bunk products, then the quack watchers will report on that instead of on the positive stuff, or maybe lump those in together and not really look at the nuance involved in the process and why some of these treatments might be working and other ones might be completely bogus. So I am really unhappy every time I hear about a company that operates this way, that scams people, because some people could actually benefit from it and get some really good results if they're dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing instead of a scam artist. But here, I'm just going to show you how to build your own. Again, this is for educational purposes only. Make sure if you're going to use it, it's with doctor approval and supervision, with coaching. And I'm not selling this to anybody. I'm not telling anybody to use it. I'm not even telling you it's going to work. Just read the studies and figure out for yourself. All right, so let's look at some things that you might need to have. And there's lots of different things that you can, there's lots of different ways you can build this for your use case. You're gonna maybe need a box knife or some kind of a knife to be able to separate the breadboards. Of course, you're gonna need some breadboards. Screwdriver might be handy if you're dealing with some attachments. Tweezers are always good because when you're pulling the connecting wires out, it's good to have tweezers because sometimes they can get stuck in there pretty good. Connecting wires, now you can get a kit like this fairly cheaply, or you can get like a 100-foot spool of it online for about $3. These breadboards are super cheap also. You can get like a 4-pack for, I don't know, $8, something like that, maybe even lower than that. The bulbs are going to be your biggest expense, especially if you're getting the right kind of bulbs. You want to make sure that all the bulbs are from the same batch, otherwise you're going to have to, it's going to complicate your wiring process. You're going to have to get resistors and all this kind of stuff. And you want to use all of the same, well, in this build, you're going to want to use all of the same frequencies bulbs are in the same thing, or else, you're going to have to adjust your current. Now, this right here is a voltage regulator. And if you are using a battery source that doesn't have an on-off switch, you should probably invest in one of these. And all the current that we're going to be working with here is direct current. If you buy just like a 12-volt adapter from the wall and try to plug that into your board using an adapter, it's just going to like flash because it's alternating current coming out of the wall. It's not direct current. This is a battery source that we're going to be using. These are pretty cheap. If you pop this open, there are 8 AA batteries inside of here. And each one of them is 1.5 volts. And so altogether, that's the 12 volts that we need. If you under support your current, just making sure these are all seated right. If the current's under supported, that's not going to be a good thing. Your batteries might even heat up or explode, so make sure that the voltage is right. Probably the safest way to do this is to get one of those DC wall outlet converters for breadboards. And that's going to be extremely precise because not all the time our battery is going to be the same voltage, so sometimes you can end up with issues there, but pretty safe overall. Now with this, I had to cut the extra space in the leads, and I really don't like these leads because they're multi-wire leads instead of straight pins. The bulbs are straight pins, these wires are straight pins, they just go straight into the board. These might be a little more difficult to connect to the boards, and so if you can find one that has straight pin connectors, that's going to work better. Otherwise, you can try to twist them a little bit to keep them straight so that you can put them far enough into the board to where it contacts the metal at the bottom. Okay, so how's this going to work? Well, if you get a breadboard like this, it's actually 3 different pieces. You've got the center piece right here, and you've got these 2 pieces. And what the easiest way to do this that I've found is to take these side pieces and take them off the board and then attach them all together so you actually have 4. So what does this look like on this side? Well, you've got these rows of 5 here going down, and if you flip it over, you'll see that the circuit connects all the way through on each one. However, the circuit's not connected in between rows, so you have to use some lead wires to connect these 2 together. Okay, now if you looked at the underside of this adhesive strip, you'll find that these are not run in rows this way, they're run in rows horizontally. And so, you've got a metal strip here, and then a metal strip here, and a strip here, and a strip here. So if you want to use this part of the board, you still can. You just have to run a lot more wires through, and that can kind of be a pain. So this is the one that I'm going to show you is the simplest and quickest way to do it. I just wanted to kind of show you the mechanics of it. It's not really that important that you understand it, just that you hook everything up correctly. This is going to take 6 wires, something like 90 some odd bulbs, and the bulb density is going to be really compact and good, which I like because you're going to get more. I think another problem with these consumer grade products is that the diodes are just way too spaced out. They're not together, they're not concentrated enough, and that's really going to affect the amount of light that's getting into the body. So I really like this way the best. I haven't really found consumer grade product that does as good a job as something that I could build, and way cheaper. All right, so first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to detach these, and you're gonna need a minimum of 2 breadboards with these components to get these longer strips off, okay? So they just kind of pull apart like this, and I'm gonna use a box knife here, and you can be careful with this that you don't slice yourself, but you know, I'm just gonna work here, and I'm just going to cut through this using this box knife, just so I can separate this off, like so. I'm gonna do it on the other side. I'm just gonna pull it apart, see where the seam is on the other side. I'm gonna cut it through. Now, the adhesive strips, you can pull it completely off, but then it kind of exposes some of that, which isn't very safe. So if you're gonna use this, you know, put a backing on it. But I kind of like the adhesive because what I can do is I can just mount this thing directly to my battery pack, and it's just more portable and easier. You don't have to be so careful moving it around with all of these loose wires. Now, I guess like you could 3D print an enclosure for all this stuff, but you know, it's not 100% necessary, although it might make it a little safer and easier to transport and so forth, but I haven't really gotten that far into it. This is working for me, so you know, the 3D printer thing can hold off for another day. All right. So once we get these apart, you'll see that there are notches on this side and that there are holes on this other side, and they just kind of fit in one with the other. So you just kind of have to find out where they line up. Here on the bottom, kind of pull them up into place. Got one side, got the other side. Okay, these I've already connected together, and so I'm going to connect and make a block of 4, so it resembles this one right here. The adhesive mounting on the back side, it kind of can make it more difficult. Okay, so now we got our adhesive strips here. We got this all connected through, and we're going to wire it just the way I wired this stuff. So when you buy a kit like this, it's going to be probably a disorganized mess. And you know, if you're going to be doing this, making a lot of these units, or even making just a few of them, it would really be beneficial just to kind of sort it out and get yourself organized. You know, you can consider this like the mise en place of electrical board working. Just separate all of your diodes. Even with this, sometimes my stuff gets mixed up, and I have a 5mm in with a 2mm like I do here, and that irritates me. So you kind of have to look at your board and see the distance between the pins that you're going to be wiring up, because when the current runs through here, we're going to need to transfer the current to these rails and run it back and then up again and then down again and kind of snake through this area. So we're going to have to connect negative to negative, positive to positive. So what's the distance between this negative and this negative? Well, it's probably about 10mm. So we're going to grab one of these gray ones, and this is where we're going to end up connecting our power, and then bulbs are going to run all the way through here. This is going to be a parallel circuit, meaning that it's negative, positive all the way through here, instead of this way, which would be negative, positive on each bulb, you know, on anode and cathode for each side of the bulb, which we don't really want. You know, if you've ever had Christmas lights, you know what I'm talking about. That's just not a bad way to do it. So that's not a good way to do it. It's a bad way to do it. So anyway, negative to negative, so imagine the current running up through here. Well, now we're gonna connect to this rail. So this pin right here is to connect to this pin right here. So we're gonna take one of these, and we're gonna wire it up. Now I'm not gonna push it all the way, and I'm just gonna kind of get it a little bit settled, because we're gonna need to do this with the positive one too. So I'm gonna grab another, and I'm gonna line it up positive, positive right here. Okay, now once I got them all set up, I'm gonna push them down into place. Okay, so now this rail right here is going to be, I got a lead that's connecting from here to here, so the current can go up and through here, and then same thing with the anode, where it's gonna come up and then connect through here so it can run back. Okay, so the current runs all the way through here, we connect it over, current runs all the way back. Okay, now we're gonna have to connect from here over to here on this side. We're gonna have to add leads here. So I'm gonna grab another couple of them, and I'm gonna go negative to negative. And it's important that you do this correctly, because if you don't, you can short out your circuit, and that's not gonna be good for anybody. So definitely pay attention to what you're doing. Negative, negative, positive, positive. Once you get both of them in, push them into place. They got to go all the way down because it's got to make contact with this connector here. And if it doesn't, then it's not going to connect. So got to make sure you push it all the way down. Okay. So the current goes up through here, back through here, up through here. Well, now we got to get it over this side if, you know, we want to use the whole board. So we got to connect negative to negative, positive, positive again. So far, not a huge deal. Now, if we wanted to do this type of breadboard system right here, this is going to require a lot more leads because we're going to have to jump from here to here, from here to here, and the light bulbs are actually going to run in series this way, or they're going to run in parallel this way, not in series, and that's going to take a lot more connectors. So to go from here to here, if we're doing it this way, we're going to need to use some of these 7mm to jump across here. And we're going to have to do this all the way down, and that's pretty simple to do. But then we're going to have to wire from here up to here. So we're going to have to take some of these 5mm, and we're going to have to go positive, positive this way. Whoops. Positive, positive this way. And then negative to negative this way, right here. And we're going to have to go all the way up. We're going to have to go all the way up this side and all the way back down this side to get the whole thing to work, which we're not going to do in this video because it's going to take forever. Okay, so we got this wired up right here. We're going to need to connect power to it. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is to connect the battery pack to the voltage switch. This part's optional. It's only about $3 if you want to add a little switch, toggle it on and off. This has already got an on and off switch, so you know it's not 100% necessary, and it's also kind of hard to mount because of the way that all of these have been soldered down, but we're going to use it anyway. So you need your screwdriver, and you see you've got power, negative, positive, motor. Okay, we're not using a motor, we're using lights, but the same thing applies, negative, positive. We're going to use our leads. I'm going to use different color leads here, connect to the board just so that we're 100% sure that we know what we're doing here. So I need to take my screwdriver, I need to loosen the screw up here so that we can get the stuff in. So I'm going to do red for positive because it matches up with my power source. So I need to put this in here. And then screw it back down. And then I'm going to use yellow for negative. Yellow is a little bit longer than the red, but that's okay. I'm going to loosen this up. Slide it all the way in here. Okay, then I'm going to connect these leads. Now it's not in series here, so we got to pay attention. So it's positive, positive on the inside, negative, negative on the outside. So we need to put the red wire into here, which I'm going to make sure the power's off before I do. Let the switch is off as well. Okay, so positive in here, the red wire. Probably should have crimped that. negative on the outside. Okay, now we got to connect the leads to the board. So red is our positive. We're going to put it into our positive terminal here. The yellow is going to serve as our negative. So we're going to put the negative lead over here. Okay. Now this is turned off and this is turned off. So we're not going to get any power yet. And the next thing we need to do is just place our lights here and then turn it on, see if it works. All right, so we're going to get our bulbs. We're going to be able to fit a lot of bulbs in this board, and they're spaced out fairly well to where we can get good concentration, but they're not like too crowded. So for these bulbs, the longer end is positive and the shorter end is negative. Okay, now see how there's no diffuser on this? That's what you want. You want the laser to go straight into you from the diode instead of being diffused everywhere. So, you know, the bulbs that you get are super important. Okay, so positive on this side, negative on this side, and we're just going to wire straight down this row, just like this. You got to make sure that you push it all the way down to make sure they're getting contact with the bottom of the board. They're crowding a little bit this way, but that's all right. Once we get all of them, we're going to be in good shape. So we just got to make sure that we keep going the same direction and that we put them in the right spots. We don't want to jump tracks or anything like that. And just when it looks like it's going to be too overcrowded, you know, we can kind of push them together like this and then jump to the next track. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to finish out these rows, and I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to talk about what happens when it goes down the other side. And I'm not going to film myself doing all of this because, you know, I'm going to use some movie magic to speed up this process so you don't have to watch this whole thing take place. But again, it's just really important that you push them all the way down and make sure that you're getting contact, or else the bulb's not going to light up and you're going to create a problem with your circuit. So make sure they're all seated right. If you get any kind of flickering or something, you might want to go through and push them back down, make sure they're all seated right. Okay. All right, now as I approach the end of this row, and you just got to really make sure that positive's going into positive and negative's going into negative. I'm doing this kind of fast, but okay. So this whole row's done. Now these wires are going to connect over here. So again, they go in the same direction. Positive here, negative here. The long end is always going to go on the bottom side. So, you know, we're going to go all the way down here. So I'm going to cut here and get the whole board working, and then I'm going to show you the finished product. So these are the 632 nanometer bulbs, and I'm just going to show you on my hand. I've turned down the lights a little bit, and I'm just going to show you on my hand how well it penetrates through my fingers and then through the palm of my hand, and that might help you make the decision on wavelength as far as 632 versus 904 if you need to penetrate deeper. So I'm going to flip this thing on, and I'm going to try to not burn out my camera sensor doing this thing. So here we go. I'm going to flip on the switch, crank it up to 12 volts. Okay, so you see on my fingers how it's pretty much coming through the finger. On the palm of my hand, not near as much penetration, okay? So it's definitely getting to the bones, but not penetrating the bones. So if you have some kind of internal bone or tendon thing, you might want to go with the longer wavelength, the 904, so you can get through a little bit better. If you're dealing with soft tissue stuff like muscle tissue, cartilage, something like that, this might be the move, or just experiment. But those are the two frequencies that seem to work according to the literature. So I'll turn this off, and there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you can catch up with all of our videos as they come out. Go to fixyourgut.com for more information, and we hope to see you soon. Have a good one.